Check it out.
I have wept and I have fallen, don't you worry about me, 'cause I stood up, yes I have grown, the pain has set me free, and like a broken record in my head.
Welcome back to Conscious Fever, hosted by Carl Price. You are listening to Conscious Fever, hosted by Carl Price.
Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've been waiting for. So listen responsibly.
Louisville's own DJ Ice. DJ Ice. You are listening to Conscious Fever, hosted by Carl Price.
It's the best of the best. It's the one and only DJ Ice, Louisville's coldest DJ.
Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've you've been waiting for. So listen responsibly.
Hey, welcome to Conscious Fever. I am Carl Price, your host here on Conscious Fever Radio, Ice Entertainment Television. Here live in Louisville, Kentucky. Thanks for joining us tonight here on the show. We've got a very interesting show for you tonight. The show tonight is talking about manifestation. So I hope you are ready to manifest. We've got one of our contributors joining us tonight. Brother John Yah is going to join us, and he's going to talk about manifestations and manifestations of your mind, your ability to do it. And he's going to tell you what he discovered while in solitary confinement. You don't want to miss this tonight. We are live here in Louisville, Kentucky. The weather was not so bad today. I am here again without DJ Ice. I know y'all probably think that DJ Ice has just abandoned the show. He has not. He has greener pastures now to I guess, fly around. If you think he's a bumblebee, I don't know. But in any case, welcome to the show. Hey, listen, remember a couple of things. Remember to continue to like us on Facebook. And remember that we are now primarily live on YouTube, on the Conscious Fever YouTube channel. So you can go to the Conscious Fever YouTube channel and check us out for Conscious Fever. We are slowly but surely, and hopefully by the summer, we are going to slowly but surely migrate away from Facebook and onto our own platform. So anyway, and YouTube is one of them. So anyway, again, welcome to the show. My guest tonight is John Yah. We've got some really good stuff going on. But I do want to remind everybody of what's taking place in Baltimore, Maryland tomorrow. I talked about this last week because I am a member of Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated, a proud member. We lost one of our founders, our most honorable founder, Frank Coakley. Passed away, and his services are in Baltimore, Maryland, beginning tomorrow and continuing on until Saturday. And because of my association with the organization, I have to have my face in the place to honor this great man. So if you're a member of Iota Phi Theta and you're watching this, remember, if you're going to attend the services, the most honorable founder, Frank Coakley, requested that we all wear our fraternal colors, which is brown and gold. Okay. Having said that, we're going to jump right into our guest, and we're going to start talking about this manifestation, because if you are one of those individuals who believe that the power of the mind is more powerful than anybody who may call themselves as strong as Arnold Schwarzenegger or as bad as Muhammad Ali, if you believe that, then you must listen to what we're going to talk about tonight on this show, which is the manifestation and the ability to ask the universe for something and the universe gives it to you. I was talking to somebody earlier and I was telling them that when I talk about the request I put out into the universe and when the universe answers those, some interpret that as being somebody who tithes and says, hey, listen, God likes you, so God is rewarding you. And some look at it as manifesting what it is you want for it to come back to you. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And I hope you enjoyed this show tonight. So we're going to get started. But before we get started, we're going to take a quick break. And coming back from the break is going to be my guest, John Yah. Now, but before we go to the break, I don't know if we have, do we have Bernie Mac tonight? No? That was one that probably didn't make it. But how many of y'all remember the Three Dog Night? Y'all remember the Three Dog Night? And if you don't, we do have Bernie? Okay. Well, how many of y'all remember the Three Dog Night? Remember Jeremiah? Was the bullfrog. Yeah, I remember that when I was a little boy. And Jeremiah was not a bullfrog. Jeremiah is mentioned in the Bible. He's not a bullfrog. But anyway.
I ain't scared of you motherfuckers.
Oh, there we go. Bernie, my man Bernie Mac. So if you are not scared of us, it's the best way. Absolutely. Manifestation is the best way. Ahama Ramathis, thanks for joining us tonight. But if you ain't scared of us MFs, I can't say that on the air, but Bernie can. Tell Bernie, reach back out to Bernie, see if he can say.
I ain't scared of you motherfuckers.
Yeah, but some people are. Anyway, if you're not scared of manifestation, stick with us after this quick break. We're going to be joined by my guest, John Yah, talking about manifestation. So we'll be right back.
corporation, the government, rebel pride, and I'm loving it. So true to the covenant in the harshest conditions. Physicians still cutting it, gotta gash it through mutton it. Still looking and button it, coat my life how I like, so you can zip it and button it. We out. R to the top, what the sun is the blackness. If you heard something different, your information's inaccurate. We beasts in the game because we monsters in practice. And they said do it big, so your boy went Galactus.
Hey, welcome back to Conscious Fever here on Ice Entertainment Television, Conscious Fever Radio. I am Carl Price, your host. Hey, listen, I failed to do this at the very beginning, so I am going to tell you now that the music video you heard was a jazz artist, ironically, out of Baltimore, Maryland. His name is R.L. Walker, a good friend of mine. And if you like the song is Taking Flight. You can check it out on YouTube. You can check out the whole album on YouTube. Some really, really groovy, soothing music during this pandemic period and any other period. Anyway, R.L. Walker, check him out. He's got a new album out, and that cut was Taking Flight. I love his music, by the way. We were actually going to reach out to him to have him to remotely play us some music live. It was going to be Christmas music, but we missed that opportunity. Anyway, getting back to the show, let's talk about manifestations. I'm going to bring my guest in. My guest is John Yah. Many of you may know him, you may not know him, but he is he's a co-host of the show The Tipping Point, which airs every Saturday morning from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here in Louisville, Kentucky on WLOU 1350 a.m. and 104.7 FM. He co-hosts that show with a young man that he's going to tell us who his co-host is, but the show is The Tipping Point. If you can absorb the ideal and the concept and the name itself, The Tipping Point, you can imagine what they talk about. Some say they are just male chauvinist pigs, but they're not that. So we'll see. Anyway, check them out. Anyway, my guest is Brother John Yah. How you doing, Brother Yah?
I'm good, brother. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. You know, it is often said when you come on this show, you just stir things up, you light things up, and that's what you do, and we're okay with that. So next time we bring you on the show, we're going to bring you on the show as our guest in the hot seat. You think you can handle the hot seat?
Yes, I can.
You can't handle the truth. Can you really handle the truth in the hot seat?
I ain't scared of you motherfuckers.
I ain't scared of you motherfuckers.
Okay. Well, listen, let's talk about this, man. Manifestation, does it really work? Anything you want to say before we get started as an introduction of John Yah, as to who John Yah is? We know you're an entrepreneur here. And from the topic in this show and some of the stuff that we're going to talk about, we know that once you were in solitary confinement and not at your home.
That's right.
Right. So any other background information you want to give us before we just dive into this manifestation and start mentally exercising our brain, that's all we can do with our brain mentally. But I'm just saying, before we start doing gymnastics on our brain.
Well, yes. Well, first, thank you for inviting me on this subject. This is actually a passion of mine to talk about since I came across this discovery of how the mind works. So, but other than that, yes, just started The Tipping Point, and I'm still working on my thesis and my book writing about my story. Of course, you are very much aware of my story and how I came across this information. So yeah, let's go in.
Okay, let's go in. Well, let's also talk about that people can reach the Tipping Point Facebook page at The Tipping Point, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay. So let's go into this. Let's look at let's deal with our first question. Okay. So I am curious, when you talk about manifestation, let me isolate that word and that word by itself. What do you mean when you mention the word manifestation in this context?
Okay, so it's the ability to be able to see your vision in your life and how to bring it into existence. Um, how to have an imagination that comes into reality. Let me give you an example. Okay, so the brain is a magnetic field. It's an electric magnetic field. And electric magnetic field is all around us. And so the brain has a capability of tapping into that source. And it's very small for some people, can everybody can understand this. You know how you're thinking of something or you're thinking of someone and they appear maybe within minutes or maybe within days. Or the phone may ring and somebody you was just thinking about. That's the realm of what we're talking about, that everyone have some story about how they came across something that they were thinking about and it just popped up.
Interesting. So I guess, and I'm going to follow up on the question that I just saw displayed there. Do we really have the ability to manifest what we want? And if so, how?
Well, let me go through my discovery of how I came across this. And of course, when I was using this concept, I really didn't know what I was doing, and it kind of showed me later over time. And I'm gonna give you a little piece of the story about my experience in solitary confinement, where I was facing the death penalty, and I was on lockdown because of a racial riot that happened in the Louisville Metro Jail. During this lockdown, I was locked down for 90 days. During this lockdown, I wasn't reading, I wasn't writing, and I didn't have any material to occupy my mind. Mind you, that you're locked down 23 hours a day. You only get 1 hour out for shower or whatever. And so you have no conversations with no one. The only person that comes to your door is the guard, either bringing you your meal, and that's it. And so here I had remained in total depression, and this is where a lot of people lose their mind, and then they internalize it. They go inside themselves. So what I did was, because I've always had this great imagination since I was a kid, I had begun to imagine that I was somewhere other than where I was. And here's how it worked for me. While I was going through this, this is when actually you came into the picture, as you was an intern for the attorney on my case, John Stewart. And actually, when I saw you, I had begun to imagine that could have been me. And of course, while while in my solitary confinement moment, I had begun to imagine my life being different step by step, almost like a soap opera, to where I found gratitude in this discovery. In other words, because I wanted to escape the four walls, I had begun to go off into my head and do this imagination that I had a family. I had took the image of you and was myself filing motions or working in the court. So I became fascinated with the court system because I saw a young man that looks like me in my age walking in the court with a suit on with my attorney. So I used that imagination that was me um, doing this. And I mean, I took this imagination from one step to the next. So in other words, if I was interrupted by the guard and I ate my food or whatever, or worked out and exercised, when I went back to my land space to lay back down, my mind will go right back to the area where I left off from the beginning. In other words, I would I would go back to whatever the thought was until it progressed. And this is where I found gratitude. You cannot manifest something or use this terminology without the word gratitude behind it. So, in other words, I found gratitude in discovering the new me. Okay. And so, in that case, moving all the way up to the time that I got convicted, I was convicted and received a 25 years to life sentence. While in prison, I started studying law. And so I started going to the law library studying law, but I never, even though I wasn't in solitary confinement, I never deviated from the thought of who I thought I was, despite that I was in prison with a 25-year sentence. And so this became what was I would call the gratitude. The gratitude was unknown to me because I just had the gratitude that I had the ability to think, right? And so the Supreme Court overturned my case in a year and a half of the total 3 years that I was incarcerated. And once I had gotten out of prison, actually, I came across you downtown when I was going to report to my probation officer. And at that time, you had just graduated and was seeking your bar license at that time. And I remember our discussion when you started your office, you invited me to come and do some research work with you. And I looked and I said, wow, I actually was taking motions and filing behind judges' chambers. And I was doing what I had imagined. Still didn't know that that's what the process was, but I actually was
Right.
doing exactly what I had dreamed I was doing.
Right. So when you talk about manifestations, then just for some lay people, when you talk about manifestations, I mean, essentially what you're doing is you're basically using your imagination to put yourself somewhere where you absolutely prefer to be. Right?
Correct.
Is that fair to
Yes.
say?
Yes.
And what you're telling us is that the power of doing that is that where you put yourself can easily become a reality.
Yes.
Right. So you imagine yourself when you were there in solitary confinement, with four walls around you. Your imagination took you to a place where you wanted to do the law stuff because it was something you saw me, and of course, most of the audience doesn't know, but you and I are the same age, right? So tell us, I mean, what other sparks did you receive from, at that point, seeing somebody that looks like you, that is actually your peer, doing something totally opposite? In other words, you're on your way to the penitentiary. This man is on his way to practice law. Right. So what did that? I mean, what else was sparked in you, or how did that motivate you to say this is not where I want to be, or did it?
Well, as I write my story, I had a life of crime. And as you know, that I was investigation for other murders. I was in an investigation for robbery and kidnappings. And at that specific time, because my father allowed me to watch gangster movies when I was a kid, as early as 4, he died when I was 13. So actually what was going on, there was a program being run in the back of my head. And the program runs, when the program begins to run, it's because of the images that you have brought into your subconscious, right? I was unaware until I studied that that's just called theta wave, which is the state of hypnosis, okay? So when my father died, I began to act out every scenario that he had me watching, James Cagney, Humphrey Bogart, all the gangster movies and doing all the gangster stuff. Well, nobody else in my family have ever committed a crime. So this was all I knew in my head was...
In fact, I'm sorry, John. In fact, your brother was a police officer.
Correct. Exactly.
Right,
and my sister
right.
was a business owner at the time.
Right. And your sister-in-law. And actually, your sister-in-law was a police officer.
Exactly.
So the ideal and the thought that... So it sounds like what you're saying is that when you were younger, at some point while you were younger watching these gangster movies, that there was a program that was being imported into your brain, into your young brain. Right?
Yes, right.
And that program would later dictate your behavior.
Exactly. You see, neuroscience indicates and said that from the time you are in the third trimester till you are 7, the brain is in theta wave. And so therefore, 80% of your life right now, up to 90% is run by the subconscious. There are things that you're doing now that was already uploaded into your brain at an early age. And that's when that later in my discovery, I began to start looking back, and that's where my writing kind of kicked off. But to answer your question, I had no other image in my brain other than the fact that all I thought and all I knew about was the criminal world. It wasn't until I saw you that I kind of said, whoa, wait a minute, I can be something else. And I had begun to imagine it. I was tired of the crime. I was tired of that world. And so I wanted to be something different. When I went into my head to do the imagination, I didn't imagine myself being a criminal. I didn't imagine myself being in the streets anymore. I had imagined myself being upright, respectable, with some dignity. I knew what that meant. I just didn't know how to utilize it, because again, when you have an information that's uploaded in your brain and you are unaware of, you have to pay attention to your thoughts and where your thoughts go all the time. And so therefore, when you are what I like to understand is like this: when you in the dream state world, in other words, when you're thinking about either the future or the past, you're actually asleep from present consciousness, meaning that you are unconscious. And when you get angry and upset, what happens is that the subconscious takes over. And when the subconscious takes over, it begins to pan out the life that it knows right in front of you. In other words, if you're angry, the subconscious will reach out and bring more things to make you more angry. If you are happy, the subconscious does the same thing to trigger to make you happy. What I later discovered was how the brain is an electromagnetic field that whatever you're thinking, the universe gives you, whether it is good or bad. If you're thinking good and happiness, the universe gives you good and happiness. If you're thinking mad, depressed, upset, the universe gives you that. If you're thinking lack, want, need, the universe gives you more of that. And that's exactly how it works.
So be careful what you wish for.
Exactly.
Exactly. Let's talk about another part of this. So I was talking with my assistant earlier about the idea that I wouldn't mind driving a Bugatti one day, right? And actually, we were talking about something that was a little bit more powerful than that, because we were talking about the universe. We were talking about throwing things out into the universe. And I was explaining to him how there were many things that I have thrown out into the universe, several things, and now I have seen those manifest themselves into reality. In fact, I wished upon a star of a certain person. And then I began to start my life in reality with that person, which a lot of people would think that I'm nuts if I would tell them that, if they don't understand this manifestation that we're talking about, right?
Correct.
Right. So talk to us a little bit more about the manifestation. I know that we talked about, one of the things that we talked about, and I'm trying to get back to that part where we talked. Obviously, sometimes I can't always do that. But is this stuff real or fake, Brother Yah?
Well, if everyone kind of look into their lives and see how they are, where they are right now, I would say this: where you are right now in your life is exactly what you put out there. Is exactly where you are supposed to be based on where you put out there, whether you think it's good or bad. Again, one of the triggers that plays a role with this is gratitude. It's a very interesting point, that if you find gratitude in the smallest thing, the universe opens the door for you. And you have to maintain this gratitude at all times, meaning staying focused and conscious of your awareness of right now. If you allow your mind to go into anger, being upset about something, or being happy about something, the universe matches that and bring it about. It is though it's like, if you have lack in your brain, you'll find yourself standing in line with somebody discussing lack, that they don't have this, that they don't have that. Why? Because it resonates with something that is already in you. See, we was never taught this. And what happens is that where we go wrong is this. Number one, we won't turn off the television. We won't stop listening to music that continually perpetuates over and over again things that are negative into your brain. We will not pay attention to our thoughts. I teach everyone that always be mindful of where your thoughts are and ask yourself, has these thoughts benefiting me? And if they're not benefiting you, you need to learn to let it go. So everybody's conditioned. If you're into racism, if you're into police brutality, notice that that's what you're going to see everywhere you turn. Every time you turn the TV on, you're going to see exactly what you're looking for. So in other words, you have to remove yourself from what I would like to call the matrix. And what we're never taught that, and this is why you see nothing but turmoil on television and the news, because these things are distractions. Black people specifically, we have a trigger word, racism, right? Those are trigger words for us because of so much that we've been through, that over time this picks up, and they know how to change the dial to our concepts. Instead, what people do is we gravitate towards these things, and we actually feel like that's where we belong. Yes, indeed, if that is what you're thinking most of the time. This is where the discovery of people using affirmations at night, listening to a recording. This is the way you upload new information into your brain to overload the ones that's in your brain that are negative thoughts. By telling yourself you are somebody, by telling yourself that you are capable, by telling yourself you have abundance. These things open the door differently for you, and your life immediately starts to change if only you pay attention to what you're thinking when you go to bed and what your thoughts are when you wake up, because these thoughts is what's going to pattern the day you're going to have.
Interesting. John, one of the things that is kind of unfortunate about live shows, sometimes we reach out to people, and in order for us to just stay politically correct, these people call in. And so I understand from the producer that I got Joey on the line again, and I'm just gonna, so everybody out there listening and watching, just bear with us. But Joey does this every week. Joey, are you there?
I've never ever been on live television.
Okay.
I've never ever been on live television.
Okay, Joey, and right, I understand that, and I know you're gonna keep saying that, right, Joey? Go ahead, say it one more time, Joey, because I know.
Never ever been on live television. I never ever be on live television.
Okay. And that's okay, Joey. I only want to ask you, because I know you want to tell us about, did you ride the super slide today?
And apparently I only went down the super slide. When I went down the one, I was scared half to death. I just freak out.
Oh, well, we don't want you to freak out. We don't want you to freak out, Joey. What about, did you get on that ride that spins at all?
Oh, it was great. Why? Because apparently you're spinning around, and apparently every time you get dizzy, that's all you do is get dizzy.
Okay, Joey. Well, thanks for calling us again, Joey. We know that you've never ever been on live TV. Whatever you like, right, and Bernie Mac also. Okay, John. I'm sorry, but Joey does that to us all the time, and we just have to accommodate him because he's a good friend on the show. So, answer this question for me, John, if you can. Why then aren't more people utilizing this?
Here's the reason why. We're not taught that the brain is a laboratory. We're not taught that. We're not taught all the chemical components that can be released to the brain as a neurotransmitter that actually put out into your body. If a person thinks of fighting, that sends an adrenaline through the body. In other words, if you're thinking about a past fight or a future fight, the body doesn't know any different. So the brain sends out an adrenaline, a dopamine, that actually makes you feel nervous, makes your heart beat as though you're actually in the fight. The body doesn't know, right? These are ways that you got to understand how the brain works. And this is why it's very close to understand to be careful of your thoughts. One of the things that we are not aware of, and I'm really talking to people that that who are our people that came through the condition that we've come through.
Mm.
We are remarkable people. The problem is that we have lost our mind.
Why do you
We
say
don't.
that?
Well, because if you look, we are bombarded with religion. We are bombarded with bad food. We are bombarded with bad habits. No one told you in school that you can have the life that you want based upon how you're thinking. Doesn't matter. I don't have no education. I never was educated. I never no. I don't have no degrees. Um, and what was interesting was that when you look at a pattern of life,
Mm-hmm.
when you a thought pattern, that when you see yourself doing something or you involved in something, you have to first ask yourself, how did I get here? Everyone can trace their life now by looking back at how they got into this position. So I ask everyone, I don't care what the situation is, the question becomes, where did you contribute to where you are now? Everyone should be able to say somehow they have contributed or they have found themselves in this condition because they have thought about it, dreamed about it, or somehow continue to have these thoughts unchecked. You see, that's a very important thing. Having thoughts that are unchecked and running away. How many times people be having thoughts and the thoughts not benefiting them? These are thoughts that are called runaway thoughts unchecked. If you're listening to television and you're listening to music, check this out. This is understood in marketing that I study. Why do you see billboards all across the highway that you're really not supposed to pay attention to because you're supposed to pay attention to the road?
To the road ahead.
Right. See, well, the brain has what is called the subconscious brain. It takes in everything. It takes in sound that you didn't pay attention to. It takes in sight that you did not pay attention to. This is why they can put you in hypnosis and make you remember things that you forgot in the forefront of your brain because it's lodged in the subconscious. When you see all these billboards that are going past you on the highway, one of these billboards can trigger inside your subconscious. Let's say it's a Pepsi billboard. You didn't see the Pepsi billboard. You didn't pay any attention to it. It went right past you. But the subconscious saw the billboard and it would trigger your taste bud for a Pepsi. Then when you get ready to get off that road, guess what? You'll stop at a gas station and you get ready to pick up a Pepsi. Back in 1950s, they blocked using subliminal messages in shows and movies. It used to be that while you was watching a movie, there was a split second in a clip that you did not pay attention to. There was a popcorn scene or a pop scene, a little bitty clip, a little bitty clip. You didn't see it with your conscious eyes, but your subconscious saw it, and it reaches your subconscious and gives you the cravings for it. Look it up. Look up subliminal messages that was banned back in the 40s and the 50s in movies, right? See, they're playing games with our minds, and we are unaware of it.
Mm-hmm. And that's basically the marketing principle, pretty much, right? Right. That's what.
Exactly.
Right. So I was thinking about what you said, and I noticed that I thought you were going to talk about the McDonald's part of it, where, all of a sudden you find yourself hungry, you travel down the road, and maybe the passenger in your car says, "I'm hungry, I want to get something to eat." But for some reason, you've never had a craving for a Big Mac, and all of a sudden, you get off the roadway, and the first thing you buy is a Big Mac, or you see a McDonald's sign, you see all these other restaurants, and you opt to go to McDonald's. Did that have anything to do with the fact that you just passed in the last 40 miles 17 McDonald's signs?
No, but see, it has something to do with the chemistry. Okay, so every food has an IP. Like you give you an example, Pepsi and Coca-Cola may taste the same to some people, but there's a specific IP, an intellectual property, that when you drink that Pepsi, that intellectual property is launched into your brain for that taste bud. You see, whether it's a McDonald's or whatever, those signs on the billboard are not won't work to people that never had a McDonald's. It will only work to those who have had the McDonald's to trigger the cravings for it.
Okay. Hey, look, so we're gonna take a quick break, and then we're gonna come back, and as we wrap up the show, we're gonna talk about. I want you to talk about solitary confinement. And because I know that these are some things that came across you while you were in solitary confinement, but also from the vantage point of either you survive solitary confinement or you don't. Right? Is
Correct.
that fair to say?
Yes.
And some severely fail in solitary confinement.
Yes.
And some come out of it okay. So we're gonna take a quick break. Right after this quick break, we will be right back. Don't eat red meat or drink soda. Ho ho. Okay, we'll be right back, y'all. With John Yap.
You are listening to Conscious Fever, hosted by Carl Price.
Louisville's finest, DJ Ice.
Hi, welcome back to Conscious Fever. I'm Carl Price, your host. I'm here with John Ya. We're talking about manifestations and are they real? Do they really work? Manifestation being that part of our lives where we realize and imagine ourselves in certain spaces, and then we find ourselves in those certain spaces as part of our reality. John Ya is our guest. He is John. One of the things that I didn't ask you about as a background, but because I know you talked about being in solitary confinement, which obviously meant that you spend some time in the big house. But you are a small business owner now, a successful small business owner. For how many years?
Actually, this is my 21st year.
21st year as a small business owner. So, what would you tell a young man who is 25 years old and is just getting released from the penitentiary, lucky because he should have served 30 years in the penitentiary, but thanks to the Kentucky Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court, his time was cut short. What would you say to that person who comes out of the penitentiary and made it through solitary confinement and says, I don't know what I'm gonna do with my life? What would you say to that person?
Well, definitely a good question. Well, let me give you this. It's very interesting. And what I teach is this: is to be able to, you have to have a service or you have to have a product. And I don't care if you're flipping burgers, be the best burger flipper you can be. To you got to learn how to get into service. And once you get into service and knowing how to serve with your best, this is how you come out of service. Let me give you an example. Though it sounds like that was the end of my programming after I got out of prison and was working with you, it wasn't. As you know, that a few years after working with you, the program set back in because one of the things that depresses me or bothers me most is someone threatening me or the threat of not having any funds. So here, 2 years after being out, I ended up back in prison again for kidnapping and robbery. This time receiving a 47-year sentence. Okay, so now, but in between those two periods, Carl, between the time I got out working for you and went back in, I was also selling incense. I was selling incense on a corner, on the street corner. I was selling incense, stopping cars, store by store. Stopping cars at the corner, right, to make some money. Carl, when I went back into prison again and received a 47-year sentence, I went back automatically, as I love doing using my mind. I went back into my imagination. This time, Carl, I had claimed myself to be the best incense person in the region. I had begun to imagine that I had my own business. I had begun to imagine that I had, and I really didn't know how to figure this out. It was just me using my imagination. Well, the same Supreme Court, as you find it to be the most odd thing, the very same Supreme Court judges set me free again in a year and a half after being convicted and receiving the 47-year sentence.
Damn.
Well, after getting out, I had gotten custody of my daughter, but I was selling incense. I had a night job, but I was selling incense again. And I had said to myself, if I can make $150 a day selling incense within 2 hours, I said, how can I multiply myself? So next thing you know, I looked and I said, how can I get this store to sell my incense? That led to one thing to the next, that the universe brought to me certain people into my life. And what you got to do is you got to ask for something to the universe and see who shows up. And when they show up, you got to learn how to bill them. You got to learn how to use them for whatever it is they showed up for. So in a short call, I ended up creating a display and I put my products in stores. Now my products are in over 400 stores in Lexington, Louisville, and Cincinnati, in the very region of this tri-state, right?
Right.
And my product is actually number one, receiving 80% to 90% of the sales, of the total sales of incense products. So what I would say to anyone is that you got to learn how to serve. You got to learn how to take either a product, you have to either learn how to have a service. You have to have a passion for it, and you have to do it your best. And this is the way you come out from under service. You may end up being at McDonald's, flip them burgers right and flip them well, and have great gratitude when you do it. You may end up finding yourself becoming the manager at McDonald's, to where you may end up owning one. But at the same time, you have to have an imagination enough to see yourself bigger and more important than who you are today. I used to see myself as, let me give you something that's very interesting. How do we look at ourselves? If I ask an individual, I would say, who are you? They may say they black. They may say they African American. They may say they African. Regardless of what name you call yourself, I begin to question and ask them, how's that name that you call yourself connected to the universe? To where you can unlock the universe with that imagination, right? With that thought or with that concept. And what I learned was, I started seeing myself as a spiritual being having a human experience. And what I began to recognize was that I am the universe. There was no separation between me and the universe. I am it. And when you begin to elevate who you think you are, when you begin to elevate your personal views of yourself, that's when you start to grow. But if you see yourself as lack, woe me, victimized, everywhere you look, I'm a victim, then that's all you're going to get is more victimization. You're going to get the universe to give you what you're asking for. See, the universe don't care about the color of your skin. The universe don't care about your condition. What the universe only does is answer your request. Once you learn that and you start learning how to readjust and changing your mind, it all opens the door. I teach people this. You can find great affirmations of whatever it is you want to be. If you want to create your own affirmation with a little music behind it, go through what is called the theta wave. Theta wave is between woke and sleep. That little bitty space is called theta wave, right? You're not fully woke, but you're not all the way asleep. And allow that affirmation to play all the way through your night, till you wake up in the morning, because you wake up and fade away between sleep, waking up till you're fully woke. Your brain is in theta wave. You should pay close attention to what's on your mind at that time. You should not wake up turning on the TV. You shouldn't wake up turning on Facebook or any social media. You should wake up reading a book about something that you're trying to become. If it's just for 20 minutes, but you have to have this discipline to do this, and you will see your life changing just like that.
Interesting. Real quick, because we're running short on time. Why do some men, and I'm going to focus on men, why do some men make it out of solitary confinement and some don't? Is it the manifestations that they find? Is it the imaginations that they use or opt to use?
It depends on how long of the solitary confinement. You can study this, that there are people who've been in solitary confinement for more than 60 days lost their mind. I spent 90 days in solitary confinement, and while I was in solitary confinement, I knew people that was from the streets that was in solitary confinement with me in another cell. They were throwing feces up against the door. They were doing things that was really gross, and you couldn't imagine that person doing that. But when they got out, they looked perfectly fine. Surely they weren't going to play with their own feces, right? But inside solitary confinement, you lose your mind, right? So I had to capture my mind with my imagination. That was the only difference. If you do not have an imagination, which is the greatest tool as a child, to imagine, never stop a child from having an imagination, because you should exercise that imagination. Regardless of what it is, exercise it, nurture it, right? So if you don't have an imagination, then you need to learn to get one. And you need to learn to have gratitude in the thought of how you see yourself. And regardless of what you're waking up to, we got to understand that this world is no different than the world that's in your brain. Here's what I always say. This is the illusion. This is the reality. Because this is what creates this. So if it's here first, this is the real. This is what follows it. This is the illusion.
Interesting. Hey, listen, John, we are short on time. We're running out of time. Listen, man, thank you for joining the show tonight. I want to also say that John Yah has been our guest tonight, y'all. He is an entrepreneur here in Louisville, Kentucky, an earned entrepreneur. I call it an earned entrepreneur because he could have manifested himself to the streets or manifested himself somewhere back in some other type of confinement, but he manifested himself to being a small businessman here in Louisville, creating jobs, etc., etc., etc. He is also the co-host of the show, The Tipping Point, which airs every Saturday morning, on WLOU 1350 AM here in Louisville, as well as 104.7 FM. So, John, thank you so much, man. We're about to start the process of trying to get out of here. So you got to come back and join us again. He is a contributor of Conscious Fever, so we're sure that he will be back.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you, man. Anytime you need me, I'm there.
Right, and that's what that play that again. So that a lot of people listen to this song and it's hard for them to actually handle the truth. Okay, John. Good night, my friend, and thanks again.
I ain't scared of you motherfuckers.
Okay. Either you are scared or you're absolutely not scared. Anyway, listen, y'all, this has been Conscious Fever. I am Carl Price here on Ice Entertainment Television, Conscious Fever Radio. And I hope you've enjoyed the ticker at the top here. The ticker at the top here has been giving you the latest news. There's a lot going on, but we just... Thank you. We chose not to just talk about that, and thank you, Tammy Coates, for congratulating and thanking our production team. Anyway, we've got to get out of here, and the Owens, father and son, are going to take us out. Until next week, I'm Carl Price. It's been Conscious Fever on Conscious Fever Radio, Ice Entertainment Television. I'll see you next week.
You are listening to Conscious Fever, hosted by Carl Price.
I was born by the river in a little tent. river I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. 'Cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it is. Then I go to my brother. And I say, brother, help me please. But he wind up knocking back down on the knees. There've been times that I thought I couldn't last for long, but now I think I'm able, Father, to carry on. And it's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes it is, yes it is, yes it is. Said I know that a change is gonna come one day. I know a change